hard. And it's what we in the industry today are calling the 10% factor. They've laid off 90% of their employees and are focusing today on delivering only a small 10% of the volume that they were delivering at the peak in the market. And so you can imagine the number of people in the ancillary industries that have been laid off in California. And they have to be retrained, they have to retrofit. And this is unlike, for those of you that experienced the downturn in the 90s when we lost the aerospace industry, this is unlike that. Because in that downturn, they could go to Phoenix, Las Vegas, Texas, Huntsville, Alabama, and they could gain employment. And they're stuck in place this time. They can't sell their house. So the changes in California are going to be longer because we don't have that change occurring from the bottom with the housing stock. It's really kind of locked in place. As far as appreciation in the home market, until we deal with the foreclosure markets, and we're doing a lot of pre-sales. So when you look at your numbers statistically, you're going to hear foreclosures are better. They're better than 2 years ago. We're not as many people are being foreclosed on. The supply is being intercepted by what we call a short sale prior to the foreclosure happening. And so what's happening is the numbers look like we're getting better, but we're really hurting the values in the marketplace by selling homes below what the mortgage loan amount is. And so we're not really correcting the real estate cycle out there presently.
Good morning. First, let me apologize for my voice. I woke up this morning and it vacated. I think it was due to my teaching yesterday. First, let me just say thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think one of the most unfortunate things about being number 4 on the list is they've covered just about everything. But with one exception. I want to talk about location. We've talked about the different markets, the product class, but I think it's important to look at the location of the product, both commercial and residential. And what I mean by that is the guys that I work with at CLU, we do think that the coastal areas of California will rebound faster than the inland areas. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, on the residential side, the foreclosure mess isn't nearly as bad in the coastal communities as it is in the Inland Empire communities. There is a much greater supply of housing in the inland communities than there is in the coastal communities. So that will help the coastal communities rebound a little bit faster. And essentially, the same thing can be said of commercial real estate. A tremendous amount of building occurred in the Inland Empire area relative to the coastal counties. And I think that's going to help the coastal counties rebound a little bit quicker. Secondly, I would add the other reason that we think coastal communities will rebound faster is regulation. Regulation seems to be a lot more onerous in coastal communities and less onerous in the Inland Empire communities. And so that's going to restrict supply. I mean, it's just much harder to get new facilities, new buildings built in the coastal communities than it is in the Inland Empire. So as we go forward, I think that's going to have an impact as well. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to the moderator.
Excellent. I can open up to questions, or I can kick it off. Does anybody have any questions to start? Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Broad question. I think you've really got to look at the fundamentals of the building. I mean, I think of the industry, and I think if you go back and you look at in 2007, I talked about this leveraging process, and I think people were looking at when they were buying. You had a lot of value add buyers pre-2007, for example. People were saying, I'm going to buy a building and I'm going to underwrite my rental growth at 8, 10, 15% growth. I mean, it's just not sustainable. And I think that got us into a lot of trouble. Today you have you don't have that value add buyer, which is really stalling the economy right now. You have more people that are looking at core with very conservative 0 to 1 to 3% rental growth. So you're seeing more core. As Paul was saying, you talk about flight to quality. You talk about people that are being, what are sound fundamentals? Quality of the tenant, quality of the product. You've got Class A product, which is trading. B and C market right now is very, very flat. So there are certain sectors that we see, multifamily is going to be very stable, and I think for all the reasons that were mentioned here earlier. An empty building in a market that's in a turnaround, might want to think about that long and hard before you do it. Plus, I think your lenders are going to look hard on that as well. Right. You're that new reality that we talked about. You're thinking correctly. The way a lot of people are thinking. I think a lot of people went into this just unrealistic. Very little of that. More your your 10-year money. I've seen some 30-year. I think you're near the bottom, and I think this. I'm just going to talk more about basic fundamentals. I think if you wait for that bottom, you continually wait for it to continually go down. You're never going to buy. People who say I'm going to wait for it to hit they're not realistic. They're not buyers. So those spreads and what have you are minor, and we think that in 3 to 5 years you're going to see some pretty dramatic growth, but not in the short term, not in the get in and get out. So.
Great, thank you. That was a very interesting question, which kind of, I wanted to kind of touch upon that a little bit. Obviously with the real estate prices declining and interest rates being low, everybody should really be sinking their teeth into these cheap properties.